Hello and welcome to this presentation on curriculum. So I'm going to look at what we've been doing at Harrow Way so far and where we intend to move to in the future. I'd like to start with this quote from Daniel Willingham. It comes from his book, Why Don't Students Like School? And he says, humans are curious, but thinking is hard. And I completely agree with him. Actually, humans, students, us, teachers, we're all curious and actually we all want to learn new things. But it is quite hard and thinking is quite hard and actually learning these things is quite difficult for us. So I think what we have to do is ensure that the balance is just right. We have to ensure that students get their Goldilocks moment. The curriculum is not too easy, it's not too hard, but it's just right. We need to view our curriculum as a bigger picture. Curriculum is of course not just a syllabus that needs covering. Christine Counsell has recently talked about this and posted some questions on Twitter that we could perhaps ask ourselves as teachers. And one thing that she talked about was getting students to think differently in the future. So questions that perhaps we should ask ourselves are, in what ways does your curriculum promote curiosity? How do you ensure that our students and young people are curious about the world around them and the future? And in addition, how is your curriculum going to challenge orthodox thinking? How are we going to move away from this idea of everything being really traditional and actually challenge the tradition and look at things differently from before? An excellent place to start with this is of course the new Ofsted framework, where the focus is very much on the quality of education. And these three words have been bandied around a lot recently: intent, implementation and impact. And they are of course a good place to start, but they are only the start and we need to delve much deeper into this to really think it through. So our intent, this is the overview, this is the point where we have the opportunity to look at curriculum as a much bigger picture. This is where we can possibly challenge these traditional approaches. We can really think about what we're covering with our students. Do we need to cover those things? Or actually should we be covering something else? What is appropriate for our setting? We're thinking about students in Andover. Their background is going to be different from someone who lives elsewhere in the country. So we have to make sure that what we're doing with our students is appropriate for them. When we come to implementation, again, this is a wonderful opportunity to think about how we deliver our curriculum. And Neil Bates has posted an excellent video on inquiry-based teaching. And this links beautifully here. How can we change the way we're delivering our curriculum? And again, challenge the traditional approach. And there are other important aspects to consider here as well. What are our golden nuggets of curriculum? What do we really want our students to know by the time they get to the end of Key Stage 3? Or by the time they get to the end of Year 11? And Chloe Darby has put together an excellent presentation on retrieval practice here, which really gets you to start thinking about what those golden nuggets are and how we're going to retrieve them all the way through. And the impact, we need to think carefully. Again, we're not just looking at students being able to pass qualifications here, but we also want them to think differently and challenge ideas. And ultimately, if we start to challenge these traditional approaches, perhaps we're going to develop much more metacognitive learners as a result, who are going to achieve better exam qualifications at the end. Within the new Ofsted framework, we need to start thinking about our composites and components. And again, this is something else that we have looked at quite deeply during the course of the last academic year. So this composite, this idea, this big idea of something we would like our students to learn how to do. And the example you can see on the screen now is of course the art example that was provided by Ofsted. But in order for a student, for example, to learn to paint with colour effectively, there are a number of component parts that go into that. We need to think carefully about these. So we need to take each of our subjects and think about what the composite elements are. What are the big ideas? What would we like our linguists to do in an ideal world to become fabulous linguists, or our scientists, or our historians? And then the components are how we're going to get them there. Within the history department, we did this year, and actually we looked at the different composites to be a fabulous historian. And actually we established that they need to be able to analyse evidence. They need to be able to understand interpretations. They need to be able to think about chronology of events and establish how something has changed or stayed the same from the past. And all of these different things are skills that we would like our historians to achieve by the time they get to the end of Key Stage 3, for instance, or even Year 11 when they take their GCSEs. And as such, we now need to work out how on earth we're going to get them there. What are the components that are going to ensure that our young people can successfully think about cause and consequence by the time they leave us? This is where we start to think about these threshold concepts. Threshold concepts, another term that has been bandied around an awful lot recently. And actually, this is where we need to think about the really important things that we would like our students to know or understand. Because actually, once they know these important things, they can then progress to the next important thing that builds upon it. So when we're breaking down our curriculums, we're not just thinking about the fact that we would like our students to analyse an interpretation. Actually, they need to understand what an interpretation is and where it has come from first in order to be able to do that. So we need to break it right down as much as we possibly can. Ultimately, the big aim here is to build a schema. And again, this is something we've talked about a lot over the last couple of academic years. We would like a thoroughly developed schema. We would like lots of interconnecting webs of ideas. And actually, once you start building a web of ideas, students can then hang new concepts on those existing webs. We think about our curriculum as a progression model. What you want to be able to do is build upon your Year 7 curriculum into Year 8, build upon your Year 8 curriculum into Year 9, so that ultimately by the time your students leave you at the end of Year 11, they have a very well developed schema with lots of ideas that are all linked together. Now, a couple of key messages to finish with. One thing we really pride ourselves on at Harroway is collaboration, and we get lots of opportunity to spend time together as departments and really plan our curriculums together. What we really want to do is ensure that everybody gets there just right. Everybody gets their Goldilocks moment. It's not too hard, it's not too easy. We also need to ensure that every student gets the same deal regardless of who their teacher is or regardless of which set they are placed in. So planning together is one key way of being able to do this. Lastly, I'd just like to say, take the risk. We have a lovely bunch of students at Harroway, and they are really, really keen to try new things. And we must ensure that we never assume that we know what our young people are capable of. That we never make things too easy, but we never make things too hard, but we have high expectations on everybody. This is a golden opportunity to challenge the traditional approach and try and do something a bit different. Let's see if we can really promote curiosity within our curriculum. Thank you for listening. Good luck.